everyone. My name is Eric Robins. I am the CERF Coordinator for the Sierra Business Council. Welcome. Thank you for coming today to our little listening session about the High Road Transition Council and our proposed structure for the council itself and its subcommittees. This should be a relatively short presentation, just going to go over some high-level details. A lot of it is also in the governance documents on our website, which some of you might have taken a look at. We do have a Q&A session at the end. Some of my colleagues are also on the line here to help answer questions if you have them. Feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can wait until the end of the session. Yep, there we go. Kaylee, thank you. She's just dropped our CERF webpage and the sign up for our newsletter and the HRTC application itself, which is open. Our first round signups are due, in quotes, by February 7th, but the application will remain open until the whole thing is filled. So again, just getting started here, the CERF HRTC, who, what, and how. The Sierra Business Council, most of you probably wouldn't be here if you didn't know who we are, but the short version is we're a Sierra-based nonprofit based out of Truckee. Our programs span most of the Sierras, and we're a triple bottom line organization focusing on community, economy, and the environment. And we do everything ranging from energy efficiency in buildings and structures to economic development, to climate adaptation, mitigation, increasing regional resilience. If you do need to know more about us, you can find us at sierrabusiness.org. But just to get on to the meat of today's presentation, basically, I will be introducing the CERF team very quickly, and then the HRTC, and then Q&A. So pretty simple agenda for today. First off, Erica Harvey will be our program manager, and she will be overseeing the HRTC Council. Many of you probably know her name. Her name was where all of the emails were coming from. Those will probably be shifting over to me as I take over a lot of communications duties. Jill Sanford is our communications director. So she'll be overseeing a lot of outreach, comms, messaging. Our Vice President, Kristen York, will be providing support to the Business and Workforce Subcommittee. Our President, Steve Frisch, will be providing general support across the board. Myself, I am the CERF coordinator. I'll be doing communications, general subcommittee support across the board, helping make sure materials, scheduling, it's all going out appropriately. Stacy Corliss, who just tuned in there, I see you. She will be one of our in-person representatives, but we'll be hiring a couple more. She is down in Mono County, former supervisor, and she will be helping facilitate the local government subcommittee. Erica Bacchus, our regional advocacy coordinator, will be helping with governance support. And my colleague Katie, whose voice you heard a second ago, will be helping on the research and data gathering side. So some common factors across the HRTC Council itself, the main body in all 5 subcommittees. Our meetings, we intend them to be hybrid with physical locations alternating between the east and west side of the crest. Obviously, we all probably prefer in-person meetings, but with fluctuating weather patterns, COVID, we want to make sure that options are open, particularly given the size of the region in question. Decisions at all levels will be based on a modified consensus model. So ideally, everyone can talk about the issues, come to an agreement, and find whether they support the issue or they can live with it. If there are issues that people cannot live with and that people strongly oppose, they can call for votes, at which point programmatic substantive issues will be based on 2/3 votes. And people can support, live with, abstain, or oppose to issues. But again, the ideal here is that we can find consensus between all of these groups and regions and stakeholders. Number 3, staff members, me and others, will be ensuring the timely distribution of materials and meeting notices, Zoom links for the hybrid options, places where they need to be for the in-person locations, all of that. We'll be handling all of that communications and logistics. And number 4, here, stipends we intend for stipends to be available to anyone who is allowed to accept that compensation to obviously compensate you for your time and your expertise. It's highlighted and in bold here though, because until we get our executed contract from the state with finalized parameters, we cannot promise anything. So it is our intent to have this happen, and it is certainly in keeping with the spirit of the laws that are making this program happen. But until we get that contract with all of the bullet points, we don't want to overpromise. So hold that thought. The HRTC Council itself will be the final decision body that will approve all of the elements of the regional plan to be used in the implementation phase beginning in 2025. It will have 21 members distributed as equally across the counties and stakeholder groups as possible. So ideally, we have 3 people from each county and distributed between tribal organizations, business groups, all of those. And they will decide on projects forwarded to them by the project identification subcommittee. And projects will be grouped as batches in 2, 3, 4, spread across regions. And projects would pass or fail as a block, as a group. And this council itself would give final approval on other guidance, such as project vetting criteria, climate and equity principles, various other elements of the plan that aren't necessarily actual projects to receive funding. The first subcommittee, I casually myself think of them, we have 2 kind of process subcommittees and 3 constituent subcommittees, but that's not a meaningful difference. The first of the process subcommittees is our data planning and drafting. They will basically be gathering all of the information to help inform the actions of the other subcommittees. They will be reviewing the analyses from our SBC, from our contractors on climate, public health, and industry and economic performance. They will recommend sectors for programs to focus on, for investments in, and they will recommend actions that support said sectors. And this could include identifying capacity gaps for local government, or identifying industries for our business and workforce groups to try and outreach to and engage with and get information from. The second of the process committees is the Project Identification Committee itself. Despite its name, they are not the only ones identifying projects, but they will be the body that forwards groups of projects to the council. In the early stages, when we're still getting everything up and running, they'll probably be using the data and information being gathered to establish formal criteria for proposing and vetting. But once we actually have projects being developed, this committee, again, also spread out between stakeholder groups and regions, will be kind of grouping projects, selecting them, and forwarding them up to the council to ensure that things are being approved or not approved on an as equal a basis as possible. And if necessary, this committee could issue official calls for proposals to the public, assuming if we don't get a rush of excited people with all kinds of ideas, we might actually have RFPs. Of the constituent committees, we have equity, climate, and labor, and this is where we are hoping environmental groups, labor unions, tribal nations, and groups, both recognized and unrecognized, will be meeting. They can establish sets of principles based on equity and climate concerns to help with vetting. And they could basically identify specific actions and capacity investments that can improve equity, because that is one of the major cornerstones of this whole project, is trying to promote economic equity and prosperity for everyone. Of the Business and Workforce Subcommittee, this is where it's self-evident, private industry, business, and economic development organizations. It will be responsible for spearheading outreach to these groups and seeking their input and information, and particular those that are targeted for funding. Their specific outreach regarding workforce development and training needs, matching existing or in-house workforce and education training to state and federal government programs in place. And then finally, we have the Local Government Subcommittee. This is where we intend, what we intend to be the meeting point for all governing bodies below the state level, but also any state or federal agencies that might have territories or projects involved in the CERF region, for example, the Forest Service or the Park Service. And their primary goal is to identify the ways in which they can assist in implementing these projects, or if they have projects themselves, including identifying the intersection between their capital improvement plans and project criteria, connecting whatever local economic development goals and strategies they may have with more high-level regional strategies, and identifying additional funding sources for projects from local or any other level. And some common threads between all 5 of the subcommittees are that each subcommittee will have a maximum of 7 decision makers. That read voting members as of about 20 minutes ago, but again, we're trying to focus on consensus-based decision making. But they are open to anyone who wish to attend and contribute to the process. Project identification, again, while that project identification subcommittee has the final say on forwarding to the HRTC, we're taking input and project ideas from anyone, the committee, subcommittees, the members of the public, anyone who has something to contribute. And the council liaison, one member of each subcommittee. In our documents, it's reading as the chair, but they don't have to call themselves that if they don't want. One member of each subcommittee will also be a full member of the HRTC itself. And that's the thrust of my presentation, basically. If people have questions now, they're welcome to raise their hand or drop them in the chat. Again, our application will be open until we fill the positions. I know I'm seeing many names on here who have already applied. Yes, Sandra.
Thank you so much. I was just wondering if being on these committees conflicts you out of making decisions related to your agency. So I work for the town of Mammoth Lakes. So if I was on the council or one of the committees, could I not participate in, recommendations for funding to come to the town?
Or if a project came before the committee that supported something in Mammoth Lakes?
Yes.
No. So because this is not an official governmental body, the full rules around conflicts of interest don't apply. We will be proposing a set of guidelines, codes of conduct for the council and committees to approve themselves. So I can see in theory, the council might want to say, if you're on the HRTC and something benefiting Mammoth Lakes comes before you, you may want to recuse yourself, but that's also not guaranteed. There is no, there's nothing saying that I'm tripping over myself here. There could definitely still be things supporting Mammoth Lakes. And that's very intentional, because we know that the people who can most help this process execute are the people who are in those organizations and who can find those projects that help their regions. So
thank you. Just to follow up, are you looking for the Transition Council to be comprised of elected officials, or are you looking, or is it just kind of a mix? Just kind of wondering how that breaks out between the council and the committees, whether you see more elected officials on the council and then, I guess staff on the committees, or is it just doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter per se. It's a mix. Obviously, we know that many elected officials, if they have the bandwidth and the expertise and they want to serve, great. We'd love to have them. But also it was the intent, a lot of the intent behind the legislation was to not have all of the power be within existing local governments, and to try and disseminate some of the decision-making process across various groups and communities. So not just elected officials, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, I'm just going to tack on to her first question super quick. So Sandra, in terms of the conflict of interest, just keep in mind that so when projects do come up, it's not an issue, but the projects are they're designed to benefit most of the region instead of like one city within the region. So that's the goal, is that we're trying to choose projects that are going to benefit more than one stakeholder. So I don't know if that helps answer that first question a little bit.
Yeah, I just was kind of wondering, I mean, I didn't, I wouldn't want to be on kind of one of these groups if it resulted in the town not being eligible for funding or, something. That was just the concern. So I appreciate the clarification, Erica. Thank you.
Questions from anyone else? No? Okay. Thanks, folks. I'll stick around until everyone logs off. We are here. My email is surf@sierrabusiness.org. That application. Oh, yes, Elaine.
Hi, good afternoon. I do have a question. What is your timeline for putting together the transition council? I know that you've been, doing a lot of outreach to try and get people to sign up. But we also want to make sure that we're doing good outreach to get the word out there and making sure that, there's a broad representation of our region. So what should we anticipate as sort of a deadline for having that commission established?
The deadline will most likely be 90 days from when we execute our contract with the state. And when we execute our contract with the state is hopefully any day now, but we're not sure. So,
Okay, it's not like Friday.
Correct. It
Okay.
is not imminent.
Thank you.
There is plenty of time. There was another question that my boss brought up that I should probably answer. Oh, yes. Should have said this earlier. The composition of the committees and the council will be decided by us, the SBC. We have been chosen as the convener. That being said, we're expecting to have to recruit people for this. We're not going to be cutting and making choices in places we don't think. It is possible, given the desire that we have the HRTC and committees spread out regionally, that we might ask folks to serve on a committee or something that wasn't maybe their first choice, because we want to try and make sure that that representation is as broad and spread out as possible. Yes, Marshall.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm a retired Mariposa County supervisor, and I want to be involved. Can just community members be a part of all of this?
Yes, as in people who don't have an official role in an organization. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. I retired the first of this month, so
congratulations.
And I do want to be involved, and particularly in agriculture, because that is what I'm a rancher. So I do very much want to be involved, but thank you for putting this on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, you do not have to be the president of an organization, an elected official, a member of staff somewhere. We want people who have the time and the expertise and the willingness to help execute this process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Eric, this is Jill. I'm just going to chime in really quick. I just wanted to know for, I think it was Elaine's question about the application deadline. You might have already said this, but I was just going to reiterate that we will begin reviewing applications on, what was it, Eric, the 7th?
The 7th of February, correct.
Yes. So if you, so that's not a hard and fast deadline to get it in, but that is when we as a team will start the process of allocating who will be on which committee and the council. So if you can get it in by then, that's a date to keep on your radar.
Okay. Then thanks, folks. Thanks for coming. I hope this was helpful. Again, yep, February 7th is when we'll begin reviewing applications. As soon as we know more about our execution date and actual deadlines, we will let everyone know. If you are not signed up for our CERF email list, please do so. That link can be found on our website at that /archives/CERF email address. So thanks everyone for joining us. I hope you all have a lovely day, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks so much.